Seeley. Daniel Kawczynski.
Thank you very much, Sir Charles, and I pay tribute to my honourable friend from South Dorset for securing this very important debate. I just want to spend the 5 minutes that I have touching upon how devolution stands up at a time of national crisis. And of course, many of us had severe reservations about this devolution process when Mr. Blair started to change our national makeup and constitution. And I speak, Sir Charles, as somebody who represents an English seat that borders Wales. So the end of my constituency is the English-Welsh border. And I have to say we're very proud in Shrewsbury of being the gateway to Wales. We have so many Welsh people living in our constituency, so much so that when England plays rugby against Wales, we have English and Welsh flags side by side throughout the whole of the town. Many people in our community have homes on both sides of the border. Many of them have businesses on both sides of the border. Many have land on both sides of the border, and most importantly, many have families on both sides of the border. And it has been really devastating for me in my constituency at how London and Wales, Westminster and Wales, there has been increasing divergence between these two jurisdictions, throwing up a great deal of uncertainty, misery and paralysis for border communities like mine. And it was really brought home to me by Councillor Hignett from Ponsbury, who has grandchildren just across the border. He can see some of his grandchildren on one side of the border, but not others, although Powys and Shropshire almost have an identical R rate. I have to also say that I'm very disappointed with the mayors. And the one I'm most disappointed with is Andy Burnham. I believe that his grandstanding, pontificating conduct on the television has destabilised to a certain degree the tiered system that was starting to show results. And I would like to ask the question, has he and his conduct, has he contributed to the fact that the United Kingdom is now moving from a tiered system to a full-blown national lockdown? And I would argue that he and his likes, the sheer refusal to understand the common need to come together in a national crisis, has contributed to making sure that areas like mine, with a low R rate, are now having to be forced into a national lockdown. Of course I give way.
No. Most grateful. Devolve and divide. And would it be wise for the government to look and not go down the future mail route in other areas of this country?
Absolutely, I agree with my honourable friend, and this is something that historians will be looking over for many years to come, and we have to learn from these mistakes during the national crisis. We have a very low infection rate in Shropshire in comparison with other parts of the United Kingdom. We are a large rural county, very spread out, and Salopians, people from Shropshire, we've been following the rules. And yet, as a result of what's been going on in these other parts of the United Kingdom, now this lockdown will have a devastating consequence for many of our businesses. And it really, and I will be voting for this legislation on Wednesday, but Sir Charles, if you could listen, as I'm sure you have done, to many of your constituents, many small businesses who have put so much energy and effort into creating those livelihoods, so much at risk now, it really pains me to see that suffering. Finally, Mr. Charles, as I said before, I'm very proud of the fact that when we came into office, we reduced the annual structural deficit, which we inherited from Labour, from £152 billion a year down to £20 billion a year. My honourable friend will remember the vilification that we came under over the last 10 years. Savage Tory cuts and austerity. My goodness me, at a time now when we're borrowing over £200 billion, when we've gone over 103% of GDP as a percentage of debt ratio, when we're already spending £53 billion of our taxpayers' money on debt interest, and when this crisis has not even finished, I dread to think the economic situation we would now be in if we had followed the policies of the now suspended former Labour leader in massive borrowing when we didn't have a crisis, and what the consequences would be now. Sir Charles, I would like to ask the Minister about something that one of my Conservative candidates in the forthcoming local elections has asked, Mrs. Susan Coleman. She still wants to have a confirmation that everything is being done for ladies who are pregnant, that when they go through the whole process in hospitals, that everything is being done to make sure that their partners have COVID tests as quickly as possible and can be present with them throughout the whole of that process of them giving birth and having the child. And finally, Sir Charles, the leader of the Conservative group on Shrewsbury Town Council wants me to ask, if the R rate falls below 1 during this lockdown, will it be possible for the lockdown to be lifted sooner than December the 2nd? Thank you, Sir Charles.